Welcome to Ben TV. You're watching The Film Whisperers, where two film nerds talk all things movies with a contemporary lens. My name is Saj.
And I'm Matt.
So we've just spoken about 2020 and the positives, right? But we cannot really do a movie show without talking about the awful bits of 2020, not the C word, but the films that we've been watching.
And also because we've been stuck at home for so long, it means that you're just bound to watch some stuff that doesn't. Like, I feel like we're mostly selective. Like, we'll kind of watch stuff that we feel we're going to like. Yeah. But because we were home so much and we watched so much more than probably we normally would. Yeah. Yeah, I think it's inevitable.
That's correct. Yeah. So let's think about this. So I know there's so much that we consume. So if I was to ask you, what was a film that you watched that made you go, oh god, or it was just really poorly executed, which is terrible? What would you say?
There were actually a few, but I think the one that I remember the most, or the most vividly, is actually a horror movie called The Wretched.
It's always a horror movie.
The bar's very high with horror for me. So like if it even is a little bit low, it's crap. But like actually, the few that were bad were horror movies. But The Wretched would be my pick.
Okay.
And it's partly because there was a period between lockdown number 1 and lockdown number 2 in Victoria where things started to open up again last year, and including cinemas.
Yeah.
And I was very, very excited. So I booked my ticket in to see The Wretched because there wasn't much else screening. And so I was very, very excited. And when I went to see it, it just was super underwhelming and not very good. So in a nutshell, it's basically about a dad and his son who go away to like their beach house for like a little holiday while the dad's sorting out stuff with his partner. And then the boy discovers that their next door neighbors are, I think, witches, or at least one of them is a witch. And it's just so bad. Like, there are no actually scary parts in the film.
Matt, that's an awful synopsis.
I know that. I was happy with the crumbs. I'm because we haven't been to the movies in ages, I'll take what I can get. But even then, it was just like, it wasn't.
Who was in it?
I don't think there are any like big actors in it. Like, I couldn't even name any of them. But
is it American?
It's American. But the parts that I remember the most are just the really poor acting. So the next door neighbor, who was a witch, just kind of like ambles around like with these weird facial expressions, trying to be, and I think it's the intended effect is for it to be scary for the audience. But I was honestly laughing like in the audience in the cinema because it's just so ridiculous. And yeah, obviously I love horror movies, and so I do hold them to a high standard. But this was it wasn't good, and I think I was doubly disappointed because it was like my first film or cinema going experience like in months, like after lockdown number 1. So. Yeah, it was very, very disappointing. Did you have one in particular that you just had like this searingly negative reaction to?
Yeah, well, mine is also a cinema film. I didn't really take advantage of the time of the year. I didn't. But once cinemas opened up again in November, December, I went and saw Wonder Woman 1984.
Okay, and before you say your thoughts on it, I don't know if I'm wrong, but was this one of the films that got delayed? Like, was it originally supposed to come out earlier? Yeah, so there probably would have been like a lot of anticipation around it, right?
Yeah.
Sorry.
And I think, let's face it, for the last couple of years, having the setting of the 80s has been something that's been it's very popular. And don't get me wrong, I love the 80s, so I was looking forward to this. I was so disappointed. I thought it was just terrible. It was a really, I found it to be really tacky. The acting was just deplorable. Gal Gadot, I don't know, made me kind of go, there's nothing, you're not really bringing much to this role besides, you probably look really great in the Wonder Woman outfit, but there's nothing else that you're bringing to this film. Kristen Wiig was amazing.
I love Kristen Wiig.
She's actually really good in it. Yeah. But other than that, as a film, it was very, very disappointing.
What about because I guess some people, and myself included, I'm not a big like Marvel or superhero movie fan, but I generally go because I know it's just going to be like a big spectacle to watch in the cinema. Like, visually, was it fun to watch? Like, was it like a big production? Like, was very good special effects? Do you know what I'm saying? Like, was it very cinematic?
Yeah, look, there were moments, and there were certain scenes that were really well filmed. The opening scene, for example, it felt like they needed an excuse to bring back Robin Wright from the first movie. So, she's featured in it, and that opening scene was really good. But then other than that, it was just such a disappointing movie. And given that the first Wonder Woman received such positive reviews, and I did like it as well. There was that expectation of maybe this would be as good or even better because it was the 80s setting. It was Kristen Wiig, and it just failed.
Oh, what a shame! Because also I feel like, I mean, not I feel like, I mean, the reality is like with superhero movies, so many of them are like male dominated. So you really want, or you really root for the ones that actually have women as like the superheroes. It's a shame that it's like just not a great film.
Well, I think though, even with the male-dominated ones, they are terrible movies.
Yeah,
you know, so they're pretty bad anyway. So I think the whole genre of superhero films, it's really bad. As in they're not very well executed because they know people will still watch it and they'll still pay to go to the cinema. And I think this has fallen victim to that that equation. I guess, you know, like, let's just make a shit movie because people will still watch it.
I was thinking about that the other day, and like I'm happy for this to be the hill that I die on, but like I feel like gone are the times where studios would invest in movies that weren't like that. So like I feel like if you go back 20 years, there'd be like such a mix of films that you could see at the cinemas, not just the big blockbusters, but also like romance movies or like comedies or whatever. But these days, like it's mostly just the big action blockbusters, like a superhero movie, or it's a remake, or it's a sequel. Like they're not willing to take the risk on something that may or may not pay off. And it's such a shame because it means like, well, from my end, like with horror, for example, you either get like, crappy remakes or crappy sequels. I mean, there's the rare exception, obviously, like Get Out, Midsommar, that kind of stuff. Hereditary is great. But it just means that like it's just so like bleak at the cinema. There are obviously exceptions, but I feel like if you went back a while, there were just there's so much more diversity in the kinds of films. Not like obviously in terms of representation, but more just like about the kinds of films that were.
I think this is my opinion. You know, if I'm wrong, you know, I'd like for someone to tell me. But I think it's because there's more and more production companies out there that are now producing films that don't need your Paramount Pictures or your Universal Studios to do so. As an example, did you watch? Because you're a horror fan, I think it was called Host.
Oh, that was great.
Yeah, exactly. That. Now, I'm guessing the production value of that would have been next to nothing, right?
So true.
But how amazing was that? You actually, you felt something because that's yours. That's a Zoom call. So I know we're talking about the negatives, but let's just quickly talk about this. So, like, how would you? What's the premise of Host? How would you describe it?
Yeah, it's just all set over one Zoom call, and it's a group of friends who decide that they want to hold some sort of like fun séance.
That's right.
And it kind of turns south because it turns out that there actually is like a presence on the call. But so well done, and like I would pay to watch that at an actual cinema. Like I feel like, but actually maybe that's the reason why there's a lot of crap actually at the cinema, because a lot of the good stuff that doesn't need big studios behind it ends up on like streaming services or somewhere that's not necessarily, you know. But yeah, anyway, so Wonder Woman and for my case, The Wretched, don't bother. Although I'm sure a lot of people might still see Wonder Woman, but at least go into it with your expectations.
Yeah. I think as long as it makes money, it still makes it seem as if films with female leads can generate that income, the profit. So but I personally, it was just not a film that I enjoyed at all.
I feel like I saw some sort of graphic like a few months ago saying that like this year, 2021, there were going to be like, I feel like maybe like 20 or heaps of Marvel superhero films coming out. Am I right? I feel like there's heaps
Probably.
coming.
I think Marvel and Star Wars have just...
that's guaranteed, like you said, cash. Like they'll get money, they'll get an audience. Anyway, those are our kind of like underwhelming films of 2020. Watch them at your own risk. But thank you so much for joining us here with the Film Whisperers on Ben TV.